This is my book review or printout review of the monadology, right? So this is by Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. I may be pronouncing that completely wrong, and I'm gonna summarize it. So pretty much it's introducing this concept of the monad, which is like a essence of like human beings, or like kind of like essence of God or something like that. And it's the idea that monads make up everything. They're the essence of life, but they cannot be altered and destroyed. And so then he goes through like all these things, like, oh, they're very like different from each other. They can't be like broken down into smaller pieces, right? They cannot be like the essence. This thing is like pretty long, right? It's like 40 probably pages or so. And then like I I don't know. I kind of didn't really appreciate this very much. And I think part of the reason, because I had a question, I was like, well, all this speculation about stuff, right? Like we're talking about literally what makes humans humans, what is consciousness. We're talking about all this stuff, right? There is no objective answer, right? And so like, in a sense, people who have all these theories, and you could like, I'm not hating on just this guy in general, but just anybody with these theories, right? It's like, we're never going to know. So in a sense, like, you're just questioning for fun, right? Or you're questioning by bringing, like, for example, knowing that we're never going to know really what is the essence of all of us, right? Does that mean that each of these perspectives that are brought up, each of these kind of interpretations, each of these views is just guaranteed to be wrong? And as a result, we can only understand the world through omission, through understanding these theories that are wrong. Because if they were right, then like we would have unlocked the secret to like understanding everything, right? Which obviously we haven't. And I don't think this is like the correct one, right? So then it's like, wow, that means like, it's kind of like, well, it's in a sense, this could be fruitless, right? Because you're just, if you imagine, right? Like if I were to ask you a question, like pick a number 1 through 100, and if you get the right number that I'm thinking of, you're going to get like $1,000,000, right? So imagine if the only way we could do it is by picking all the other numbers first. And that's pretty much what this is. It's like you're doing all the wrong things and then using that to try to get closer to the answer. And of course, right, like there's no like, we're not going to be able to just one shot pick the right answer for like how exactly consciousness forms, right? I understand it's very complicated, but I feel like you should only pursue this kind of activity if you really enjoy this kind of stuff, because otherwise, in my opinion, I feel like it's kind of fruitless, because you're knowing that you're going in a wrong direction, but you're just hoping that it's the right wrong direction to go into that will lead someone closer to the truth. But it's like, I don't think, because there's no objective measurement, right? You could be all the way over here and think that like, oh, I should be close to the objective truth, or we're going the right direction. And the truth is all the way over here, or all the way in the back of the room, right? And so it's like, you maybe just looking in the wrong place. And I didn't like some of the reasoning here, because let me try to find it. Like some of it was kind of questionable, right? So yeah. Okay. So it was kind of just saying, oh, like everything in nature, right? There is a like endless continuum of them. They're all like these different things. There's infinitely complex, all this stuff, right? And then he's saying, okay, thus the final reason of things must be in a necessary substance in which the variety of particular changes exists only eminently as in its source and the substance we call God. And I was like, this just means that like whatever you can't understand, you're just going to put it into this bucket called like God, right? Like that, based on that reasoning, that's what you're doing, right? And then I was thinking, well, like obviously, right, you can't say science has the answers to everything, right? Because it obviously doesn't. But I would say, like, if you follow that reasoning, then a lot of phenomena that we see in our life that are purely like scientific perturbations of reality, in the sense like they just naturally are occurring, right? And there is no pattern to them, there is no like interaction with like divine in them, right? You could just label that God if you just don't understand it, right? If you go back 100 years, and so like it's some things that seem to be cured miracles, especially like medicine, right? You could just attribute that to God. Whereas now we learned, oh, well, if you actually do this, they'll live longer, right? And that's how you prevent like, stuff. Obviously, I agree. We don't understand everything, right? There's still a lot of gaps in our understanding. But the question is, are we just going to continue to apply God to like all those things that we don't understand? And then, 100 years from now, when we have more understanding, are we like, oh, yeah, like we know that's not how it works anymore. But now for the rest of the stuff we don't understand, we'll still apply God. Like, it's just interesting to think about that. And I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that. But okay. And then this was also another piece of flawed reasoning that I didn't like. So, and as nothing can interfere with the possibility of that which involves no limits, no negation, and consequently no contradiction, this, his possibility, is sufficient of itself to make known the existence of God a priori. Right? So I was kind of like, is this saying that if you have any black hole, any like, unknowable, right, this just proves that God has to exist, right? Like I think that's that is not a healthy way, in my opinion, to go about rationalizing and thinking about things, because then you're just saying that, oh, if I ask you the presence, like if I ask you that question again, 1 through 100, you guess the right number, and I'm thinking of like, let's say 56, right? And then you're like, well, since we don't know, any of the other numbers, what they could be, right? Then we're going to say that this has to prove God exists, right? Like, okay, that might not be exactly like what he's trying to say here, but like, I think that's like a analogous point, right? It's like you're just saying any uncertainty where there can be an outcome that we can't fathom, right? And I think after reading Anti-Fragile by Talib, I think I really start to see this more. It's like we humans suck at predicting randomness. We suck at predicting really terrible events. We suck at predicting all these things, right? And so if we suck at predicting all these things, how on earth can we just like assign the idea of like things that we can't understand, things that we cannot rationalize, which is like quite a bit, right? And also has decreased over time in a sense, right? Because there become things that we can now understand, right, about the world around us and about how things occur, right? How can we just assign that to this like scapegoat third figure, like bucket that gets everything, encompasses everything, right? That we just don't know. Just throw, oh, I don't know what that is. Just throw in that bucket, right? Throw it in the bucket, right? Oh, but I know what this is, so we're not going to put that in the bucket, right? So like, that's like a big question I have from this. So yeah, I think like there's, in my opinion, this was a lot of like philosophical yap, because I feel like it's just like such an abstract, intangible, thing. And as a result, I feel like there's no objective way to confirm this. And like, there's some claims in here that I'm just like, I don't understand like how this kind of goes, right? I don't understand where this is going. I don't understand how this originates. I don't know what we're trying to do with this. So it's like pretty confusing. Okay, and then he says here towards the end, right? Finally, under this perfect government. Oh wait, actually, sorry. Okay, so it must be said that God as architect satisfies in all respects God as lawgiver, and thus the sins must bear their penalty with them, right? Through the order of nature and even in virtue of the mechanical structure of things. And similarly, the noble actions will attain their rewards by ways which, on the bodily side, are mechanical, although this cannot and ought not always to happen immediately. So it's pretty much saying people who do bad things are going to get justice served to them automatically, eventually, but it may not happen immediately, right? But I'm like, sometimes it doesn't happen at all. Like, honestly. Like, I think maybe the only thing you can feel is personal guilt for doing something bad, but like, we cannot say with definition that all people who do bad things like are just like, paying for it. There are definitely a lot of people out here who do bad things and they don't pay for it at all, right? And I mean, there's a lot of questions about people like Jeffrey Epstein, right? And is he going to heaven, right? Is he going to hell? Or like, but then it brings up the question is like, does that even exist? And then it's like, what if he just dies, right? And then if he just dies, like, well, technically he didn't really pay for anything, right? He didn't get any like personal atrocity like reprimanded back to him compared to what he did, right? So like that kind of flips on its head, right? The existence of these kind of situations where, like, for example, why wasn't he like, reprimanded right after he did those things, right? Why does it take like a 10, 15-year delay for this stuff to happen, right? That suggests that this is actually human fallacy, human fault, human issue. This is not suggesting that this does not suggest that there is what it's claiming to be, right? This order, magical order of the universe that automatically adjusts for bad and good, right? Yeah. And okay, like another thing, right? So, I'm trying to make this a little bit more simpler. So, okay, if we could sufficiently understand the order of the universe, we should find that it exceeds all the desires of the wisest men, and that it is impossible to make it better than it is, not only as a whole and in general, but also for ourselves in particular. Yeah. So it's pretty much saying like, oh, we shouldn't change anything, or we can't change anything because everything's perfect already the way it is. And I think we can all agree that there's not a lot of stuff in this world that's actually perfect, right? There's a lot of issues with everything, and that's because of human nature, and humans just suck. And we have good parts, we also have a lot of bad parts, and the bad parts get really, really bad, right? So, yeah, I was just like, okay, that's just not true of like how the world actually works, right? And so you is it saying overall we can't change it? Like, I still agree we can change stuff. Like maybe you might say, well, as long as we're confined to the Earth, right, we can't change anything. But what about space travel? What about like going to the moon, going to Mars, and those kind of things, right? Shouldn't that define the laws of like, or shouldn't that defy the laws that this guy's saying of like, oh, we can't change anything because we are clearly like going out of our whatever would be natural bounds, right? Like, I don't know, right? Same thing like making an atomic bomb, right? This is like a fundamental perturbation of matter of the universe, right? That we have learned to kind of do, right? And that's kind of like, I think, changing a lot of stuff. So then at the end, I kind of made this, these two columns, right? And I can kind of show them to you here. And this is something I kind of thought about, right? So hopefully you can kind of read that, right? But pretty much on the left hand side, it says understanding / rationalization of the world around us, which includes some science. I'm not saying it's all science because science is not perfect, obviously. And so it's like, as that amount increases, right, as we understand more about the world, as we're able to actually rationalize more about the world and have like theories that are actually successful, right? I'm not just saying make up random like stuff, but actually have proven testable things. Then what we can assume that will happen is kind of like the religiosity or things attributed to God would decrease. Because like I said, right, you have these two buckets, right? Things you understand and things you don't understand. And a lot of things you don't understand for a lot of times, right, has been attributed to God, right? Even back in Greek and Roman times, whenever there was an eclipse, solar eclipse, they thought it was the gods and they didn't understand why it was happening. So now when they see a solar eclipse, we know, it's just the moon, right? But like, that is actually like a part of science that we understand, right? And that is actually something that we would no longer attribute to God, right? We wouldn't say that there's a solar eclipse because of God, right? We would say that this is a science thing. So my point is that if we continue on the route of increased understanding, what we would see is a decreasing number of things you can attribute to God. And as long as the universe continues in this path of increased understanding and we don't hit a plateau sometime, we would eventually see that, decrease and decrease and decrease. Although at the same time, right, you could say maybe it just encompasses more of the things we don't understand. But I think that when you keep having the situation of, we don't understand this, and so for 100 years we attribute it to some like magical being, and then, then once we figure it out, we're like, that's actually not it. No, that's we understand it now. So that can't fall in that camp. So we take it out of the bucket, move to another bucket of things we understand, and then repeat the process with everything else that we still can't understand. And you just keep doing that again and again. And I feel like if you look at history, like, then doesn't that just mean that that's just like a placeholder in a sense for stuff we don't understand? Does it actually necessitate its existence? And I mean, those are big questions. I don't have answers. I'm not pretending I have answers, right? And you should think about stuff yourself, right? I'm not saying that the way I view the world is correct because it could be very wrong. But it's definitely stuff I think you have to question. You have to think for yourself. You have to rationally be like, what is going on here? And rationally be like, what do I think is happening? And what do I think is really happening? And look at history, look at stuff, look at how humans behave over time, and I think answers will become much, much more clear.